So back in 1962, President John Kennedy stood in the middle of a football stadium at Rice University and gave what would later turn into one of his most quoted speeches. It was designed to sell the American people on the NASA space program. And in it, JFK challenged the nation to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade. The whole thing was powerful, sweeping, painting a romantic picture of American destiny. And it worked. Except then all the government's engineers and aeronautics experts had another problem. They had to actually figure out how to put a man on the moon. I've been thinking a lot about Kennedy's moonshot in terms of the NBA this whole year. First, of course, when the league decided to put on the bubble. And again last night, after the Players Union voted to accept the league's proposal for what next season would look like. 72 games, starting December 22nd, playing in home arenas and home markets. Now, on its face, none of that might seem as ambitious as staging a competitive playoff island in the middle of Central Florida, where COVID is everywhere else. But in a lot of ways, this next season is actually going to be a lot harder task with more complicated stuff to figure out. The United States only has more of a coronavirus problem than it did last time. There will be positive tests. And unlike the NFL, where teams have 6 days between games to monitor whether the virus has spread throughout their organization, NBA teams will be trying to manage those positives while playing 3 or 4 games a week. They will be playing a sport unlike, say, baseball, where players are in a constant swirl of contact, breathing and sweating all over each other. And they'll be doing all of that in indoor closed arenas, which, by the way, is not just a challenge for the NBA's medical folks, but for their business folks as well. We know that wherever they can, team owners are determined to sell tickets and get some fans in the building, but wherever they can is a really short list. Our researchers, Michael Schwartz and Cesar Fernandez, looked up the limits on indoor gatherings for each state the NBA has teams in. And here's what they found. A quarter of the teams in the league play in states where the limit is 25 people in an indoor space. So forget fans, the NBA is going to need to get some sort of special dispensation just to stage games with 2 full teams of players and coaches. All of that means TV really is going to be the main way fans experience the NBA this season. And as we've seen in so many other sports during this pandemic, watching games in empty stadiums with cardboard fans can often feel more like watching rec league workouts. Is the NBA going to mandate that its 29 arenas all build the extensive video boards that work so well in the bubble? And what about the games themselves? We've already heard players saying they expect the short offseason to induce more load management this coming season. But in a year when the NBA is counting so heavily on its TV contracts as its main source of revenue, can it afford having the stars take nights off game after game? There is still so much to figure out here, and in a really short period of time. You know, the most famous line in that Rice University speech from President Kennedy was, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." Last night, the NBA officially chose, and now comes the hard part. So, Paul, there won't be a bubble this time around. First of all, nice to quote a president sounding presidential. There won't be a bubble this time around. Yeah. How should the league handle what will inevitably be positive coronavirus tests now that we've seen some other leagues get at it?
Well, you got to take a sample for what the other leagues are doing, but you can do it the way you did it in the bubble. You know, we're going to have a quarantine period. And I don't know if that's placing a player at his home, or is he going to be in a hotel, but there's going to be a quarantine period of time, but there's going to be more players diagnosed this year because of the travel, because of not being in the bubble. This year is going to be more difficult than last year because you're going to have many players missing games because of COVID. It's inevitable. It's going to happen because of the travel, the places you stay, the hotels, the restaurant these guys are going to go to. It's inevitable. And so it's going to be more difficult than last year. You're going to have a lot of teams that are going to lose games because of COVID coming up. So, you know, we're going into another first-time thing again. You know, no longer a bubble. Now we're going into actual games in actual cities. So it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a long year.
I think though, if any league can pull it off, it's the NBA, right? We've seen these other leagues, you know, make it through their seasons. And I do think that Commissioner Silver was taking a lot of notes. But he's going to take those notes and combine it with what he knows about his team's travel, what they pulled off in the bubble. I think they're going to be aggressive about testing, contact tracing, all of those things to really, really try to keep it neutralized. If it does pop up, you will see some games get postponed, but probably played later. I would not want to see a lot of games get ended or just totally, where they cancel them. But that is a possibility, and so we have to be ready for that. But when it comes to the fans, I hope they build those video boards. I love seeing Paul and them sitting up. It was great. You see President Obama up there and James Worthy and all of these different people, and I just enjoyed it, where you see all of these different, who's going to be on there next, right? And so I hope that they do that in the places that they can't have fans, just to keep that element of fan participation in. But a credit to the league and to our players, that they are going to put a great product on the floor regardless.
Well, look, they've told the baseball players, football players, when it was out of the bubble in their home market, look, here are the rules we need you all to follow. And it's a bit of an honor system, right? Don't go to parties, don't go out to bars, don't go out to restaurants. When you're on the road, don't leave the hotel. We'll have everything in the hotel for you so you're not mixing with the local community, all of that stuff. The question is, can players do it? And Paul, there's just a natural fatigue, right, with guys over 7 months. We saw, I think the Cleveland Indians had 2 pitchers maybe who were on the road and left the hotel, and I think the rest of the team voted them back down to the minors, right? I mean, there has been a bunch of issues with guys in a short time. And look, that's basically what the NBA asked guys to do when they were on excused leave from the bubble.
Right.
And we saw what happened with Lou Williams, right?
It's going to be easier for the high-profile guys because they live life in the bubble.
They don't go out like that anyway.
They don't leave the hotels.
Right.
When you go on the road, because you worry about fanfare and people getting on your nerves when you're on the road, but it's the other guys, the road guys, and the guys who don't play much, who are bored, who are just there to work out and then go sit on the bench and watch the game. Those guys, when they come in the city, they're going to be like, man, I just want to get out the room a little bit.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.